So, hi everyone, Angela Brooks here, and I'm thrilled to have you join us today on the Everything Real Estate Network. Today's topic is one that many entrepreneurs grapple with at some point. Should you start a business from scratch or buy an existing one? It's a question that can shape the course of your career. To help us navigate this crucial decision, I'm honored to introduce you to a true expert in the realm of entrepreneurship and business strategy, Eric Strauss. Eric brings a wealth of experience and remarkable track record to our conversation today. Eric's journey in the world of business is nothing short of inspiring. With a background in media M&A at Henry Ansbacher, Inc., where he played a pivotal role in selling 14 media companies in under 2 years, Eric has a deep understanding of what it takes to evaluate and acquire existing businesses successfully. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Eric's entrepreneur spirit led him to purchase, operate, and eventually sell 10 radio stations to iHeart Media for a staggering $24 million, demonstrating his ability to transform ventures into lucrative opportunities. He founded, operated, and successfully sold online recruitment business to the prestigious PE firm Warburg Pincus for an astounding $100 million. Since 2013, Eric has been a key player with the Transworld Business Advisors, where he has facilitated the sale of over 100 small, medium-sized businesses in the vibrant New York City area. His insights into entrepreneurship, negotiation, and business valuation are invaluable. Today, we have the privilege of tapping into Eric's wealth of knowledge as we explore the pros and cons of starting a business from scratch versus acquiring an existing one. Eric's unique perspective, honed through the diverse experiences, promises to shed light on the intricacies of the decision-making process. So whether you're a budding real estate entrepreneur or a seasoned pro looking to expand your horizons, get ready for an engaging and enlightening conversation. Eric Strauss is here to share his wisdom, and I can't wait to dive into the topic with him. Let's welcome Eric Strauss to the Everything Real Estate Network. Hi, Eric. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, Angela. Thanks so much. Good to see you.
We are honored to have you. I have recently had the opportunity to meet you through a client, and I couldn't wait to share you with my network. But first, I want to take a moment to hear your story. So where are you from, and how did you get here today?
New York City, born and bred. I was brought up in New York and DC growing up. Went to Yale for college. My dad was my parents really were in the broadcasting business. So got out of school and moved to Denver, have some fun, and then started working at a radio station there. Then came back to New York to work for my parents for a while. My dad sold the station in the late 80s, and I worked for the new owners, which was a great experience, and then got called by this headhunting firm and went to work for this investment bank that specialized in selling family-held media companies. And so that was Henry Ansbacher, this British investment bank. Learned a lot about valuing media companies, valuing companies in general, and selling them. Saw all these idiots getting rich in the media business and thought I wanted to be a rich idiot. So I bought a radio station in upstate New York, moved up there, and then over the next 10 years, bought and operated a bunch of radio stations, sold those in 2000 to Clear Channel, which is now iHeart Media. Then I started an internet company. This was a lot of your viewers will not remember back in the day when newspapers had all the help wanted advertising, but this was back in that day. So I started a business where basically radio stations could work with me to go up against the newspapers in going after these recruitment advertising dollars. And we built that business over the next 7 years or so to 35 million in revenues and 7 million of EBITDA. And then 2007 came and things started to slow down all of a sudden. I don't know why they did, but we decided we had to put it on the market. We went and hired a broker and went to market, got 18 bids on the business, and eventually sold it to Warburg Pincus, who part of the deal was I had to stay on with them for 2 years. And one of the things I learned is I'm not a very good employee. And after my 2 years were up, I started another internet company, which was a miserable flop and very humbling. And then at that point, I'm 50 years old and don't know what I want to do next. So my wife suggests I go to a franchise expo. So I went to a franchise expo in Miami, and I couldn't quite see myself hawking pretzels on 9th Avenue, but I bumped into Transworld Business Advisors and loved it. I love doing deals. I love working with small and mid-sized businesses. I thought I had something good to offer since I've been on the other side of the table. I've been an owner, and I've been doing that Transworld for the past 13, 14 years. Have a group of 10 brokers who I work with, and it's a really wonderful business. We love it, and we're learning stuff every day.
Well, I am so glad you're bringing all this experience to us, because it sounds like it's been an amazing ride. And going from media into selling brokering businesses, it kind of makes sense too, because it's you got to touch of a lot of the different businesses while you were out there in the media. So the networking that you had there alone, you can bring that to that experience as well. I love it. So that is how we met. We actually met because we know someone that is selling their business. And as you know, I'm a real estate agent that just is fairly new to the industry, although I've been on the outskirts as a marketing coach for the last 20 years, working with stagers and decorators. This question comes up a lot, and I see, as a marketing coach, I see a lot of people starting their businesses from scratch. I actually help a lot of them even just get the foundations of learning how to do a marketing strategy to get started. I was so interested when we were talking about how do you decide, and why do people that are starting out even know that this is an option, and what that looks like? Is it even affordable? Do they have to have a lot of money? Like, we have so many questions. We're going to go over this today. Okay. So the very first question I have is, what are the primary advantages of starting a business from scratch, especially in the context of real estate? What's the biggest consideration when you're trying to choose from scratch or from an existing business?
Sure. So cost of entry, obviously, if you're starting it on your own, can be less money because you're not buying a multiple of the person's earnings. I think that buying a business is more secure than starting it on your own, right? What do they say? New businesses, 80% go out of business in the first couple of years, right? So I think in buying a business, if you're buying a business that's been doing, $1 million top line and $200,000 bottom line every year for the past 5 years, chances are, if you don't mess it up, it's going to continue to do those numbers, or better if you can improve it. So I think that buying an existing business is certainly a safer way to do it, but it is more expensive because you're paying a multiple of that $200,000 of earnings. But I would say in either case, the most important thing is not to enter this new stage of your life being undercapitalized. So if you're buying a business for, $300,000 of your own money plus some debt, and all you have is $350,000, I wouldn't do that, because things are not they're going to be hurdles. They're going to be bumps in the road. And I think the reason most businesses go out of business is because they're undercapitalized. They can't weather the storm when problems happen. And so regardless of whether you're starting it on your own or buying it, make sure you have some cushion for, rainy day funds.
I think one of the benefits of buying an existing business is that you actually have the numbers in front of you to start with. Usually when you're first starting out, you're not quite sure how much money you're going to make, what it's going to look like, and we spend a lot of time forecasting, if I did this and I do this and I do this, I should get this. But with an existing business, you can actually see that they did do this, and this is the result they got. Now, if you make an adjustment or make something different, then maybe your numbers could come out a little different too, right?
Yeah. And by the way, there's sort of a third leg here, which is, you're saying starting businesses on your own or buying. There's kind of a middle leg, I think, which is buying a franchise, right? So Transworld is a franchise. I own the New York City territory. I'm my own businessman, but I'm able to use the knowledge that's been built up over 40 years in this business to my benefit. And so I think an interesting middle leg sort of is buying a franchise, which is, it's still a new business, but the business model is proven. And you have the step guide on how to run the business. So I think that, at Ansbacher, they called me Rod Carew, the greatest singles hitter of all time. I did a lot of deals that were $100,000 and $200,000 fees, where a lot of my compatriots were doing like $1 million fees all the time. I sort of go for the safer things. I think that, buying a business is probably safest because it has this history of earnings. Buying a franchise is second safest because you have the business model already worked out for you. And then starting a business on your own is probably riskiest. It has maybe the highest upside, but it's the riskiest because such a huge percentage don't make it.
Right. So from your perspective, what are the key factors that entrepreneurs and investors should assess when considering the purchase of an existing business?
Most important, I think, probably is your gut, how it makes you feel, and how much you're going to like it, right? Like, I love getting up every morning and doing this business that I'm doing, and so it doesn't even feel like work, right? So is it something that's going to excite you on a day-to-day basis? I think very importantly, right? And then, when it gets down to brass tacks, obviously the financials and are the margins good? What sort of clouds are there on the horizon? A great question when I was selling all my businesses that every buyer asked me is, what keeps you up at night, right? What are the things you're scaredest about happening in the future? So, is it the nice thing about buying a business in 2023 versus 2013 is, if the internet was going to have an impact on the business, it's had that impact already, right? So when you're looking at buying a business or starting a business, how does the future look? What are the problems and what are the opportunities?
I like that. So that's like factors like market trends, things like that, what's happening in the locations, the competitive landscape, that kind of thing. Do you ever help people, like when you're helping people buy, what are the things that you first start with when they're first looking? Like, you're looking at their passion, you're looking at what's going to make them excited. But then when you go into the numbers, do they have do you look at the cash flow that they have going in first, or how do you determine who would make a good fit usually, or do they usually know when they come to you?
You look at what the business is cash flowing, what the operating profit is of the business. You look at how much the buyer has to put down. You look at what sort of debt service the business can handle paying, and you look at what sort of experience they have, right? So if the guy's an investment banker, is he going to be able to run a creative business? I'm not sure if he is or not. So I think a lot of it has to do with, again, what their passions are and what their experience is. And, if the financials work out, it's those other things that I think are going to make the difference.
So if we're looking at factors like market trends, location, competitive landscape, how do those factors influence the business potential? Do you sit with them and talk about what's happening in the marketplace, or how does that work? Like, somebody's starting off because they're very excited, they really want to do it, they know they can do it. Where do they look for to make sure that, the market trends are okay? Is there place like websites? Is there places like that? Or do you have to, like, what is it that you do for researching the market trends, and what's happening?
It depends on the business, right? We have a business, the guy distributes commercial doorways, aluminum commercial doors.
Right.
This is going anywhere, right? He's been distributing these for 40 years. I don't think, right? In most of our businesses, you're not looking at 30 and 40 and 50% growth, or 30 and 40 and 50% declines. You're looking at sort of good, steady businesses. So I think that, if a business has been doing pretty well over the past number of years, and there's nothing obvious staring you in the face, I think it's probably going to do fine for the next number of years as well. There is sort of paralysis by analysis, right? Where people are looking into every little detail of the business. I think if you look at a business, your gut can tell you pretty well whether the future looks bright or not.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I like to do with my clients, I like to do SWOT analysis a lot, and it's like named on so many different things. But over the years, like I call it a beyond exercise because I like to add balance and energy into it, as part of it. Like, is your personal goals match the business goals, and make sure that, when you're starting out the business. And I think it would work for an existing business as well as, a starting from scratch business. Like, do your personal goals, what you want to have in your life and to give you fulfillment, does it match what that business logistics are going to look like, and the business goals themselves. So you want to make $1 million, but you only want to work 3 days a week. Okay, what does that look like now? What is that kind of, structure going to be? And how much investment capital do you need to have to make that happen? Because it's possible you just have to buy other people's time instead of your own, kind of thing. So I love looking at SWOT analysis to go with this too, because of weaknesses and threats, and we that's where the market trends would fit into, like things like competition, COVID, things we can't control, right? Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, I'm excited. This gets me pumped up. Can you tell? Okay, next. How about, could you elaborate on the due diligence? So the process that individuals should take before buying an existing business. So, you've seen things probably go bad before, so what would be some of the very quickly, like quick basic tips that people need to just do their due diligence before buying a business? Just to give them that little
Okay, so
protection.
one thing I want to point out is some people try to do due diligence before they even make an offer. And one of the things we have to keep buyers on a sort of straight and narrow path is you make the offer gets accepted, then it's time for due diligence, right? So, and due diligence, so I guess the first thing is you want to check the financials, work out. So compare the tax returns to the P&Ls, and do a spot check to make sure that the revenue that they say is coming in is in fact coming in, and the expenses that are going out are going out. So spot check a couple of expenses. And then I would say, if it's a business with significant clients, maybe to call during due diligence 3 or 4 of those clients just to make sure that the relationship between the client and the seller in this example is a good relationship, right? That the business is going to be staying there. I think those are really the most important things.
So you make an offer first, it gets accepted, and then you do your due diligence. So it's a lot like real estate when you buy a house, but on condition, right? Like, so it's on condition that these things are met, and then the person makes the or accepts the offer, and then you have a time frame that you can go through and make sure that the conditions are met, and you do the same thing with the business.
Exactly right.
Awesome. Okay, awesome. So in your experience, what are the pivotal indicators that signal a business's potentially successful investment opportunity? Like what makes you go, get all excited and go, oh my gosh, this is going to be a great investment? What are some of the flags for that? I know you probably already said some of them, like financial.
No. Well, obviously you can get it financed, but I'd rather buy a business that's growing at 10% a year than a business that's declining at 10% a year. I think that I'd love to buy a business where the owner is more absentee than less absentee, right? So if I'm going to go in there and work 80 hours a week, I'd love to do that and have that be additive rather than just replace the person who was working 80 hours a week before me.
I never really thought of that. So when you're getting your business ready to sell, because I again, one of the first things, you'd be amazed, one of the first things I ask people when they're starting a business and we're working on a marketing plan is I say, what's your exit strategy? And they'll look at me like I'm crazy because they haven't even got a name yet sometimes. And they're looking at me like, what do you mean, what's my exit strategy? And I said, well, that will determine how you set up your business. If you plan on selling your business for $500,000, $1 million someday, how you set it up in the processes will be part of the value, and add to that value as you go, and it'll be easier to sell later and add more value to it, the price later. So it's interesting that you answer that way, that the business owner needs to get to a position where they're out of the business 70%, they're only in working on their business 30% of the time, and then that way it's easier to transfer later and it's more valuable to someone like yourself.
Absolutely. And I guess two other things, in real estate is location, 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 right? In my
Right.
business, it's books, books, books. If you want to sell your business, make sure your books are good,
Nice.
right? So make sure the tax returns are solid. If there's cash coming in, report it, etc. If you want to get maximum price for your business, the books have to be good.
Right. Yeah. And in the creative world, like, so you know that I've been really close. I'm in marketing. I'm close to the stagers and decorators of the world, and I think that that's the number one struggle that many of us have is because we're creative people. So the finances and the books are one of the hardest. So that's a good piece of information for my network for sure. Can you share any real life experiences or examples of entrepreneurs and investors who've made successful decisions by either starting from scratch or acquiring an existing business? Like, you know, you've seen them go through the process. They chose one way or the other, and it was good for them because. Do you have any, any stories to tell?
Well, I mean, I guess I have a lot of friends in the radio business, and I was in the radio business. And in the radio business, there's only a certain number of frequencies you can buy. So you had no choice. You couldn't start your own radio station. You had to buy them. And it was a nice business. Not so much anymore because of internet radio and Sirius XM. It's not such a great business, I think, anymore. But back in the day, there was sort of this moat. In market X, there were only 14 radio stations. So if you could own 5 of those radio stations, kind of by definition, you had a good business. So I love businesses to buy where there's barriers to entry. And that gets me very excited to buy a business where it's hard for other people to start up and go against you, When we started this Help Wanted business, it was just lucky, right place, right time. It just sort of came to us. There was this great opportunity. I think in general, it's easier to go buy a business, easier to go buy cash flow that's already there, easier to value it. But sometimes if there's this remarkable opportunity and a lightning bolt strikes you, you go for it. But I would say if you're starting a business, a good idea isn't good enough. Like I had somebody pitching me on AI is this next great thing. We should start a business in the AI world. I'm like, I don't know about you, but I don't want to go up against Amazon and Google in a business that I built, right? So yes, someone's going to figure out a way to make a ton of money using AI. I don't think it's me with my, resources or lack thereof. So I think that when you're starting a business, besides having a great idea, you have to really think about who can eat your lunch and how easily they can eat your lunch.
So you get tons of business ideas coming at you all the time. So that's one thing I've really been aware of during our conversation is like, I don't know about you, but I see opportunity as a marketing coach. I see opportunity all the time. And everybody always tries to convince me, oh, you want to work with me? We could do this and we can grow this. And, my biggest value, which I've learned over the 20 years, my biggest resource I have is time. And if I get spread too thin, then I can't really, maximize that time and really get a return of investment back. So how do you choose? Like when they keep coming at you, like, do you have a big picture in your mind right now as you move forward in all the businesses that you've done? Like what's your next venture kind of thing? What makes you make it easier to say no to those things? Or do you just connect people?
I'm 63. So for the next, God willing, 30 years, I'm going to be doing Transworld Business Advisors. This is what I love doing. I love buying and selling businesses. I love help people buy franchises. I love developing franchises. Selling someone's business for them and allowing them to retire I get great joy out of that. And giving a new business to a young entrepreneur, I really enjoy that as well. So for me, it's pretty easy. But I guess in answer to your question, if I were to write a business book, and I don't think I ever will, but there's no question that one of the chapters would be the power of no.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is you just gotta pick your lane and focus on it. I've got so many people that are like, I want to buy a business and run it absentee and keep my full-time job. And I'm like, that's great. I want to be Brad Pitt. I mean, it just ain't going to happen, right? So if you want to own a business, you got to be ready to dive in, right? With all of your blood and all of your sweat and all of your tears and all of your money. And that's how you're going to make it succeed. And to think you're going to be able to keep your full-time job and keep your benefits and run this business on the side, I think that's just fantasy. And so what I would say is focus, focus, focus. If you want to do it, that's great. You should do it. But don't kid yourself. It's going to be a lot of time and a lot of effort. And the rewards are really exciting. But you got to put in the blood, sweat, and tears to make it work.
So that brings up a question of, so if I have an existing business, and then I have an opportunity to buy, or I'm thinking about buying an existing business, or I'm thinking of starting my own, which one do you think takes more time?
I would suggest that starting a business would take a lot more time. Right? You're starting a business, you're renting the space, you're buying the equipment. On day one, after 6 months of work, if you're lucky, on day one, you open up. By the way, there's been no revenues month 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. Day one, you open up, and there's no revenues in minute one, right? And you hope people come to the door. They will or they won't, whatever. I think there's no question. By buying a business, you already have people coming in. You already have the revenues coming in. You already have the expense structure. So I think as far as time, there's no question that buying an existing business is preferable.
Right. Okay. So then let's look at the other resource that we have. So we have the resource of time, then we have the resource of money. Okay. So I can say I'm going to start a business. I think it'll be cheaper if I start my business. Let's say I got $100,000 to start this business. Just give me an example. And I'm not going to pick an industry. I'm just going to leave it an open what's it industry. Okay. I invest in starting from scratch for 100,000. And I take all this time and the money dwindles in the bank account and just keeps dwindling in the bank account. And I don't know when I'm going to make revenue. Okay. Now, even with a good marketing plan, sometimes it takes a little bit of tweaking and whatnot. So let's say, for example, I forecasted in the first couple of years that I would make 50,000 for the first year or second year and so forth. And I forecasted that, and we all know that it takes about 3 to 5 years to really kind of start hitting and making a profit when you're starting from scratch, because you're investing a lot into it. You have the inventory, you have resources, staff, etc. Okay, the location, all that great stuff, all your trademarks, all your priority information, all that stuff is being developed. Plus, you are figuring it out in your head, because you're doing a path on your own. No one's gone there first, that you know of, and no one's put the indicators to say, yes, this is the right way. So you can go down here, and then that's the wrong way, and go down here. So in a couple of years, you spent your 100,000, you might have made 50. Okay. So now you're still having trouble. So let's say you do well and it takes you 5 years to start making money. Okay. Now you're not as passionate. You're a little bit tired. You figured out that, things are a little tougher, and, competition's now coming up because they're following you. And guess what? They're watched you so closely that now they're doing it faster than you. So and the perception is, and maybe their marketing is better than you, that kind of thing. So the perception is that they're doing really well right off the get-go. Okay. I always say perception is. Mm-hmm. So now let's go to the other scenario. You have $100,000 and you want to buy an existing business. You use some of that as a deposit, get financing, even if, let's say, you're buying a business that, say, now I'm not into finances and stuff, so you can correct me later, but let's say you buy a $200,000, $300,000 business, but you already know the numbers. You should know almost exactly, if you follow that pattern. There's already a pattern, there's already a path, there's already a website. If it's turnkey, if it's a good investment that you've made and it's turnkey and ready to go, you should be making money immediately. Now you're just making back the money that you put inside, and you're just making back the interest on your finances, right? But you have a gauge of when you should start making profit. Is that correct? And if you segment it, you can make a living yourself at the same time if you have it set up properly.
Absolutely. Yes. If you're buying a business and you're putting down $100,000 and you're financing the rest, and you do the math and you see what the interest payments are, and you see what the principal payments are, and there should be money left over to pay yourself a salary. And then hopefully if you improve the business, right, all that money, your expenses pretty much stay the same. All that additional dollars should be able to fall into your pocket. So absolutely.
So if you're a viewer listening and you have owned your own business and started from scratch, how long did it take you to start paying yourself? I don't know how many people come into my coaching and they say, I've been in business for 5 years and haven't took a paycheck yet. I, of course, guide them to say, you got to start taking a paycheck today. The day you open your business, you got to start evaluating that, like as soon as there's money coming in, there's an allocation that should be going into the bucket of you right away. However, that's not always the case, and people don't always have that advice from someone, and they don't always understand why that's important. And I always say you can always invest back in, and that company owes you the money. But never paying yourself means that in 5 years you've never paid yourself, and you could be closing and you've never even seen a dime going into your own pockets. And that to me is the definition of working for someone and never getting paid. Never getting and I always say, you can come work for me, and
right. Sometimes I ask people who are in that situation, they call me up about selling their business, and they never like to hear this. I'm like, look, do you have a business or do you have a hobby? If you're not paying yourself, it's a hobby. Let's not kid ourselves, right? So yes, if a business is not paying you money, it's not really a business.
Exactly. Okay, well, I think you've given so much light. Is there any other advice that you would give to someone who is sitting here right now going, should I buy a business, or should I start from scratch? Is there any other advice that you'd give to that person right now?
I guess I think if you don't have a brilliant idea to start from scratch, it's much easier to buy a business or buy a franchise. So the blueprint is already worked out for you there. And then the second thing is, don't be undercapitalized, right? If you don't have enough money to weather, when I would buy radio stations, I would only buy them if I had enough money in the bank to operate that radio station for a full year with no revenues. Even though I knew I would make some money along the way, I wanted to have enough of a cushion when stuff happens, I could weather that storm. So the second thing is, don't be undercapitalized. And then the third thing I would say is, don't kid yourself. It's going to be a full-time job times 3. And so don't think you can just dip your toes in the water to run your business. If you want to start or buy a business, be ready to be doing 80 hours a week for the next 2 or 3 years. And, once you figure stuff out, once you have systems in place, you can back it down. But don't think you can work at 15 hours a week and make money doing it.
If you have an existing business now and you were looking to sell your business, what would you recommend to people who are looking to sell their businesses? Where do they get started? How soon, how long should they be planning to sell? When's the right time, kind of thing? I think there's a lot of questions there. I think we could do a whole show on that, to be honest. But
I guess first things first is, as I said before, books. Make sure your books are good, right? That's number 1. Number 2, systems, right? If I run the business and everything's in my head, and I go to sell the business, that's scary to a buyer. He has to get stuff out of my head to run the business, right? If I have systems in place, if I can go on vacation for 2 months and the business will run itself fine, that's a much easier business to sell than one where there are no systems in place. I would say that those are really the 2 most important things: books and systems, right? So working on the business, not in the business. that's the way to be able to sell your business, is to have a business that can run without you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I am so excited. I could talk to you all day, and I know that you've given a lot of great information for our network. And I know that whether they're looking to sell their business, there's a lot of factors here. Even if they're even if they were looking at your answers to say what would be what buyers want. That's what they need to do, is just keep looking at your answers as what would buyers want. And then on the other side, if you're sitting here and you're wondering, should I start a business or should I buy a business, and I only have this amount of money, how, what would be the best for resources, time and money? And then the other thing, like you said, if it's an idea, that's a different story, but there might be a business out there that it aligns very nicely, that you can make money while you're doing your idea. So there's lots of options here, lots of great information. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Great to see you. Thanks for the time. Have a good one.